way I choose. I gotta handle my BI, and I do. And hold the TI-NY tool with a mind of its own, no telling what it might do. Mess with my loot and it might pop, it might lock, it might not, it might shoot, and it's not the chance to take, just like it's not the answer. Who out for the paper? Hands up. Blaze that can, pay that dancer. Holla if you ever been placed in handcuffs. Survival, the name of the game. You wanna play? You wanna race? Don't wait for the bang. Let's go.
Gotta go and get the money.
Worldwide, let's get it.
Gotta go and get the money.
Can't stop hustling, baby. Oh,
Gotta go
yeah.
and get the money.
Bring me my money.
It's for you.
Gotta go
Yeah.
and get the dough.
Okay.
Money. Gotta go and
Get these nuts, yes, it breeds cheese or bust. Dealing with the gangster shit. Now let me say it again and say it with feeling. Dealing with the gangster shit. Hit it, spit the flame. Hit it, get the bank and split. Hit it, twist the dank and hit it. Hit it, switch the game. Hit it, flip this change and spin it. Down here in the valley of death, we walk that. Talk crap and wind up wet in the alley. Survival, the name of the game. And everywhere I go, they play it the same. So stay minding your own and grind and go. Keep shining, keep headlining shows. And get that dough, let's eat my Let's not be broke next week, my Cause you know how we do when we
get the money.
So keep stacking your chips. Oh,
Gotta go and get the money.
Pimp, keep macking your bitch. Yeah,
Gotta go
get
and
it.
get the money.
Don't stop, just do it.
Gotta go and get the dough.
We gon' rock on it, yeah.
Gotta
Rock
go
on it, yeah. Rock on it. We don't quit. Rock on it, on it, rock on it, yeah. Rock on it, rock.
Yo, 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 yo. What's good, y'all? Hope everyone's chilling. Okay, so today, if you're part of Space, you know exactly what this image is. Not me, by the way. So funny. Okay, so today I have the PDF open here. We're going to be talking again about workflow, not as conceptually today, more literally, with actually applying some of this stuff, and then kind of like talking about how I apply it, and kind of a little bit of rehash on what we talked about last week and stuff. So it's a good thing to be prepared, pretty much. So some people can see that as like overthinking shit, or I've even heard the perspective of if you plan too much with art, you'll never finish it. So it's all objective, of course, and subjective So it's all based on people's, personal take with workflow. Hence why I even give my example as this is just the way I do things. So I'm more minimal with the way I start up tracks because I'm super maximal. Like when I'm actually processing stuff and then getting deeper into, um, the whole session stuff. So I'll end up loading a ton of stuff if I start with the big session and then I end up bogging down my computer. So that's kind of my approach with just starting tracks in general. It's just to have a little bit more of a, kind of summed up version of that. And then we're going to talk about actual recording today and do some reamping. And then next week, I'm going to be performing and I'm going to record some bass and then I'm going to record some other stuff. And we're just going to talk about how to start to track stuff and kind of the mindset when setting up loop recording and other things like that. So there's a ton of different strategies with doing that in pretty much every DAW. So what I do in Ableton is what I used to do in Pro Tools. Pro Tools is way more optimized for tracking, hence why it's the industry standard. Ableton has a ton of workarounds that you have to do. Essentially though, all of the approaches are the same, just because there's one approach that is I guess all-encompassing, that is 40 years prior to any of these DAWs being made, which is the multi-tracking, overdubbing kind of workflow. So there's a bunch of different ways to kind of approach that. Okay, so just to kind of get into gear here, ranted for a good minute last week, which was pretty much all class, and I was pretty upfront with that, saying that workflow is 80% mindset, 20% sweat, and you can even say 50-50 on that as well, because you do have to put in the time in order to get yourself up to the point where you can fluidly just sit down in a DAW and work. My approach with that specifically, because I guess I know a lot of stuff, hence why I'm teaching. So, that used to kind of be a hindrance for me personally, because I would overthink stuff, I would overproduce things, and I would do too much. So now my approach nowadays is to really just kind of throw shit at the wall. Because I know the rules, I'm literally breaking them on purpose now in order to just try new things, experiment, literally just get myself inspired by knowing where the normal thing to do is and then just going completely right from there. Yeah, so it's kind of a process. Also, it takes a ton of say with that specifically, where you're starting up a track, thinking I want to do something different with D and B, or say any other genre that's a little bit elitist about its own structure. You just have to have confidence with that, and you have to get ready for some hate. The hate is part of the process. It's it's always a sign of you're actually succeeding. Polarity is a sign of success. When people feel strongly one way or another about what you do, then you're doing it right. Because, one hand someone hates you, other hand someone absolutely adores you. So there's literally only your next course of action from there. As an artist, it's really hard to detach from the hate, of course. Because everybody's so personally identified with what they're doing. So you just have to kind of be able to tune that shit out. And then when it does come to your door, because that's just going to happen. It's I've gotten it in stream, I've gotten it in DMs, I get it in person too. So I have to deal with that a lot. And I've dealt with it almost my entire stint through the industry as well. in multiple industries too. Like I've passed up game job opportunities because I didn't like the way the vibe was at the actual office. It's like if everybody's doing something that's just very toxic and there's like some kind of bro club or some other shit that, creates like a toxic environment, it's like don't want to be around that because it's just going to fuck up multiple things in my life, which is what I really love to do, which is making music. And so if I'm not 100% focused on that, not confident in what I'm doing, other factors in there, say, even with like, the example of somebody getting kicked out of a studio, which I talked about a couple times last week. There's the classic story of, anybody in somebody's like personal rapping recording session or whatever, the minute they say some hate, they're just like literally exiled, on the spot. Like, yo, who the fuck are you? Get the fuck out. Just like escorted out when you're just a homie. And then you decide to say, oh man, that sub sounds whack. And then you're just like, okay, who the fuck are you? You can fucking leave. So you pretty much need to have confidence in yourself because you're going to be that person for yourself too. You're going to be your own self-doubt. But then there's going to be other people behind you who are second guessing you as well. So you have to be really, really, really clean with how you go and approach stuff. So when you go to sit down to do something, you just do it. There's no like waiting for validation from somebody. Say if that sub that dude said was whack was like the next thing for like Dirty South, and then that dude didn't put that sub in there because he's like, yeah, you're right, it's a little too distorted. That's the kind of shit that would literally break the success of an artist. So it's like you got to be able to push that stuff out and then stay on a very clean forward momentum. So on top of that as well, I talked about kind of like setting up a career ladder and all that stuff. So planning for success, as vanilla as that sounds, is super important. So you need to start strategizing what you're going to be doing with music. If it's a hobby, what are you doing to push that hobby forward? Like if you were into woodworking, you should probably take up on how to use a lathe, how to use a router, how to use all this stuff. You're not going to be able to teach it to yourself, so then you got to take classes. So it's like if you didn't know where to start, you would easily be able to say, well, I need to use all of these different tools. So in order for me to accurately use them and create cool stuff, I need to learn from a professional. So, that's part one of the success strategy, is like actually being prepared for the opportunity. So when opportunity meets preparedness, that's when success happens. So you just got to keep that in mind pretty much with everything. So if you're thinking about like producing, being your artist self, this is really, the point where you can say like, how am I actually gonna make this track? What kind of track am I gonna do? All that shit. What concept album am I gonna do? Which tracks am I gonna send to a label? Having a ton of stuff to send to the label that you're confident on, you like, you believe in, and then they have more than enough material to kind of look through. Same thing with like creating a portfolio for professional stuff. You kind of always want to like oversell yourself a little bit in certain aspects. Like if somebody was asking you to do like some like app sound design, they're like, yeah, we just need like this paper like to sound like it's moving across a desk. And then you send them like transformers, and then they'll probably be like, well, it's a little much. I think you're gonna overproduce this. So you kind of have to gear yourself to what you're gonna do. Say like if you're sending music out to labels, it'd probably be a good idea to send halftime or drum and bass to a halftime and drum and bass label. If you send something else, there's a good chance it won't be accepted, but if it's good, sometimes the label will debate on whether or not they want to go and venture down that road. Say, like for Division, just as an example, the art punk stuff that they're doing with Arigato is a little bit different from what they're usually doing, but Ties specifically is more of a, sound designer, kind of like producer for like cinematic stuff, so obviously there is some type of influence there of him just having influence to say, hey, this is a good idea, and I think this would be just a good look, it's a good new venture to go down. Kind of like I gave the example of Brain Feeder, where if everybody sounded like Flylo on Brain Feeder, it would make Brain Feeder less weighty. It would make Brain Feeder the Flylo sound. So when you listen to Brain Feeder, you don't hear that. You hear all these different takes on just production in general. It's literally like every single artist is drastically different, as I was talking about last week. So you gotta find your audience, so company, whatever, and then you gotta gear yourself towards that, and then you have to like be taking step towards that every single day. So best strategy to do is to make a list for yourself, and I have like a little workflow thing in here, but there's a couple different ways you can do this, and I highly recommend this program Slack. If anybody has it, kudos. But this is a program that's usually used for professional stuff, but I use it personally for for my collab alias with my buddy Zach, HFO. We have a Slack. You can see this right here. So obviously it's very productive in here. I love posting possum stuff. Judge me. But also, I have everything organized in here for to-do lists, things. I have notifications, all these things that we have planned, right in here, ready to go. Yeah, so whenever I'm working with a company like outsourced, subcontracting, I'm working through Slack, and they join me into their Slack, and then I go pretty much get all the assets and work from there. And then I can see exactly where they're at and what they're doing. So pretty much we use this to like manage samples that we're working on, and like our sample pack that we're working on as well. Hint, hint. And also just our next album, our next singles, all that stuff. So a lot of stuff on the agenda. And then you can just have, nice little Jimmy Edgar stuff for motivation. Just like in my Discord. So, find something like that keeps you organized in some way. If you're just not someone like that, and me personally, I am not that. I am not this crazy organized person. I'm not a type A. By every means, opposite of type A. So it's literally me like doing yoga, making a fucking schedule, because I have to sit down, I have to do it, I have to hold myself to it. Literally, it's like write that down in a thing, remember to do it, and that's the thing. It's like I have ADHD, so I have to like literally do that, or else I forget everything. So this is a huge thing though. Like if you're not into Slack or whatever, literally just make it for yourself. It's free. Then you can try Asana, which is similar to this, and I give, the example there. I think that one's like $10 or whatever a month, but that one's more a personal organization and all that stuff. So Slack is for, it's like Microsoft Teams. It's for project building, specifically for a team to work together. Yeah, so I mean, I'm also pretty organized. I mean, I'm not like super disorganized. It's really just like I have to take the steps in order to keep myself organized. And so when you're doing that, make sure that you're planning your attack on the industry, healthily. You're going out to events, you're seeing how it's done live. You can network at events. Networking is a huge part of stuff in general, just getting work. Like I made a few of my contract like connections from friends' shows. Like I remember one time I met this dude who I ended up getting a lot of work for. They did like a bunch of stuff for Nicki Minaj, LMFAO for like their music videos and shit. And I was literally at the bar getting a drink, and this dude standing next to me was like, "Hey man, what's good?" And I'm like, not much." He was like, "Who you here to see?" I was like, "Oh yeah, my buddy is like DJing right now." "Oh no shit, that's my homie too." And then, sure enough, he was the CEO of this company. And then he's like, "Oh shit, are you a producer too?" Like, "Yeah." And then he asked for my card, gave him my card. He was like, "Yo, let's go back to my studio and have a couple drinks and just hang out." And then did that, showed him music. And he was like, "Holy shit, that's cool." So literally, like, we were just hanging out. It was a chill night. It wasn't like, "Hey man, so I'm a producer. You look like you're blah blah blah." Or, "Hey, artist that I came here to see, here is my portfolio. Here's my blah blah." You know, there's ways to do that, of course. Um, you know, like say like the Skrillex example again. He definitely did give a USB to deadmau5 in order to get his name at him. But there are situations for that and there aren't. So say if you were like someone like that where you are giving your USB to someone, be humble, do not be intrusive with it. Be like, "Yo, I love you so much, blah blah blah. Here, just take this, man. Bye." You know, just try to not be very forceful with it. All right, so kind of moving on from there. So it's really important that you guys start planning out your shit. In order to get momentum in anything, you have to do that. And then, this last part here is just the agenda for today. Kind of like talking about recording stuff. But I mentioned something about troubleshooting in there. So troubleshooting is also a huge part of workflow. If you don't know how to pivot when things go wrong, then you're kind of lost. Like say for instance with me on the stream specifically, it's like when something goes wrong, you know, you guys can tell me exactly what's going wrong because I'm not listening to my voice. But also, when I hear what's going wrong, I can go exactly to that thing that I know is fucking it up, and then go and reset it, do whatever I need to in order to like clear things up. And of course, you know, I'm open to that feedback, which is like actually a question that I believe Stosu had. How do you decide when to actually give weight to negative feedback? When you did something wrong. You know, so if you fuck up and someone tells you, blah, blah, this was like this, and you're like, "Oh, my bad." You know, be humble to it. Be receptive to that feedback, including the negative feedback too. Like the stuff that's just purely negative, you know, for the sake of being negative. You know, it's kind of my name, anti-negative, but, you know, at the same time, I take negative feedback with a grain of salt because there's always a grain of truth in there. Somebody's coming in here talking shit to me about, "Oh, why are you doing this? This is so boring, blah, blah, blah." It's like, well, you just don't know what's going on. Yeah, but maybe I am kind of deliberating on this a little bit too much publicly. So maybe I will pull that back. But you're an idiot. But I do take some of what you said in account. You know, so like, say if somebody who was listening to your music and did not know your music, like I've literally had engineers like give feedback about my music that have zero clue about EDM or just production in general. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that you do have to take with a grain of salt. I remember one dude told me like my like second drop was like too much. Like maybe just make the first drop like more like the second drop. You know, just kind of dial it back a little bit. Ends up being one of my biggest tracks, and just like, well, good. I did not listen to you, but at the same time, I took that into account. Kind of dialed the mix back so it wasn't so abrasive. So it's like different different ways to filter feedback. You have to be able to filter, you know, destructive feedback into constructive. So filter out the bad shit, you know, the dumbass part, which is like the engineer saying something is specifically about the genre that he doesn't know, or she, you know. And really, that's just kind of like the only thing that'll hinder you. You know, it's kind of like somebody in the back of your studio telling you that sub sucks, whatever, fuck your snare. Going on Twitter and saying, yo, your snare sucks. Looking at memes of that. Just kidding. But I mean, it's kind of like the same thing where you just have to like, you have to hear it, but then, you know, you have to take it with a grain of salt. If somebody gives you a suggestion and they're like, this is just a suggestion, but maybe you could try another riser on your buildup. You know, that's constructive. That's saying, I'm not undermining your ability, but maybe it could have this too. Yeah, so you're actively acknowledging that they know what they're doing, and then also adding to whatever they've done. So you want to be that for people, because then you're actually giving constructive and beneficial feedback. You can be, you know, the type of band instructor where you're throwing snare drums at the wall, and then you're making your students bleed. That's different though. That's a different situation. You know, it's like that's you teaching somebody, I guess, toxically, but at the same time, people gotta learn somehow. You know, you gotta learn. If people really just don't have the I guess focus for it, they have to be yelled at in order to stay in line with certain things they have to stay in line with. When you're practicing music and you want to be at the top level of jazz, you literally have to practice every day for about 3 to 4 hours a day. If you don't, fucking give up. Like, for real. And I'm being mean with that because you have to make that decision now. Like, the more you go and make the decision like, I don't have the time to do this, the more it's just a hobby for you. So make it a priority, even with your other priorities in life. You know, so find ways to like stay very, very up on your skill sets. It's the only way people get extremely, extremely, extremely good. Okay, so anyways, that's going to be it for the philosophical talk about that. But now, getting into the hardcore workflow stuff. So, you know, we kind of like talk specifically about all that stuff I just said. You know, that's going to be kind of supported here and in the last week as well. So if you need more refreshers on like, I guess, how to stay organized with your momentum in life, then go and reference that. Go and look for other sources as well. If what I'm saying doesn't apply to you, find a version that does. Figure out a way to get yourself on a momentum path. Because you can do literally whatever you want to do in this life. For real. You know, people are going to tell you you can't along the way, and that is life. That's literally the roadblock. And so you have to be able to say, well, no, I'm doing this. I know after a certain time, I'm going to have a seat regardless of my skill level too. So you just need to keep, you know, your head up, and also, you know, stay humble towards things and call people on their bullshit. When people are bullshitting you, tell them, yep, I hear you, but no. You know, be very, very, very adamant about saying no to things. Like, especially negative feedback. It's like no to 90% of what you said, but 10% okay. So you have to be like very, very clear with your boundaries with people, or else people walk all over you in this industry. And people get threatened very easily. So people will be passive aggressive with you, will try to unravel what you're building. So you have to make sure that you're confident again. Oh, thanks for the follow. For some reason that made my mouse glitch out. All right, so now approaching production. Now that you've cleared your brain, your health and mindset, all that shit, you know, what are you going to do once you start producing? So we've talked about all this stuff. Know your brain. As weird as it sounds, it's just as important. So, not all brains are the same, just yours. Figure out what hinders your workflow. So, what part of production is going to slow you down? Figure that out by making music every single day. So, make a little bit of music every day. If you make a 15 bar loop, not even 16, you're only able to make 15. That's still fine. You've made music that day. Success. So, as long as you do that, you will start to build all of your muscle memory. So, your brain workflow. Know how to feed and hydrate yourself. That's huge. How to work with a deadline. What type of workflow to do with that. So you're going to get all this stuff once you get more experience. And then organizing your shit, your sample library. That's a huge thing. Then step 2, know your roadblocks. Sound design in production session or separate. That's something you need to decide for yourself. Personally, I like sound design session and then production session. I like to have them in 2 separate avenues in order to make my workflow quick. And when I'm producing, I'm not worried about sound design. Like I'm worried about making melodic stuff, making the vibe happen, and then I go back and redesign whatever I need to do. So that's the next step. And then the third is having integrity. Again, back to the philosophical shit. So this is something I won't support. And if you're doing it, I guess stop and don't tell me, because I will lecture you. But yeah, if you are putting tracks in your tracks as formulas, please stop. This is a huge, huge problem for your workflow, because you are not thinking about structure. You are now using training wheels, and these training wheels will hinder and stunt your growth as a producer. So what's going to happen is you're going to grow to sound exactly like somebody else, exactly the way their tracks are produced, down to the actual sounds where they are in their tracks. So you're making a sound just like their sound at the same spot, maybe even cutting the intro to drop the same way. So this is fine when it's a exercise. The thing is, though, in every aspect, every time I've ever taught and allowed people to do this, they do not stop. And I've gone in to do mentor sessions with them, which is like being paid one-on-one to come through, and then I check out their track that they want help on a mix on, and I see the same thing again. So it's like, even after I tell them, hey, it's time to take the training wheels off, they're still on. So, I say personally that this is hindering your workflow. But this is less subjective here. You are definitely plagiarizing. You are definitely taking a pre-made essay. Sick autocorrect. Pre-made essay and replacing some of the words and all that. So that's the same mentality, same mindset. You want to have a counter argument to that, please present it. I would love to hear it. Because that's a huge problem with the industry. It's why I started this school. It's why I'm not complaining about it publicly, because I believe that it's not a problem with the people, it's more a problem of the teaching and the education. It's like people not able to speak other languages normally in America because language is not taught very well here. It's not very conversative, so most people in high school do not remember any language they learn. So, hence here, if you go and stunt your growth in the wrong way, put your foot on the wrong stone when you learn, then your entire foundation will be compromised. You won't be able to grow as big, because now you're growing to a certain specification in order to sound like a certain person. The minute you want to go and veer off of that, you're going to go have to find a new template. More templates to go and just mash onto each other. And you're not approaching it from this organic zero perspective of, I have nothing in front of me, I'm making something happen. A blank canvas. and then throwing paint at it? What if you've never heard something, but you end up writing something that's really close to that thing, but you haven't heard it before, but others hear it? So that's definitely going to happen, and that's totally okay. So if, though, in the instance of, because that exact argument was given with the Zomboid Skrillex thing, which is a perfect example. It's like a lot of aspects. At first, it's like, I didn't know. And then it comes out, I guess I did hear it and remake the exact same thing. So there's two arguments to that. But overall, when you choose the same notes as somebody, that's not a problem. You might get sued by Tom Petty or something like that, because that is a problem legally. If you choose the same modulation, all that stuff, it becomes you're stepping into other people's IP territory legally. So that's something to be mindful of when I've talked about that in the sampling class and just legality of that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's all about how you see it. It's about how you see other people's music. When you listen to other people's music, try to dissect why they did something, not what they're doing. It's like, why did they bring that riser there? Why did they redrop it 16 bars into their drop? Into the same thing. Why does that still work? Why does this transition work here? Why does this do this here? So just figure out why. Reverse engineer as opposed to re-engineer. So you don't want to just remake what they've already made. You want to assimilate knowledge, assimilate their influence. Why did they do that? Why did they do this? And so then you can go, you literally take a step into their shoes. Now, you become them, but you become their experience more so, as opposed to being exactly who they are. It's you, like you are you. Doesn't matter who you are. You're still you inside that body. You know, so if you're gonna go and put yourself into the perspective of somebody else, figure out why they did that. Because everything you do in life has a why. And, you know, people see that example and they just go for how. With art, it's different. With making something engineered, making a robot, whatever, yes, of course. Because that's more mathematical. You know, but when we bring math into something that should be sporadic and random, it makes everything formulaic, it muddies the scene, and it makes everybody generally jaded. Like, there's nobody who just listens to EDM who doesn't have some type of opinion about this specific thing. And a lot of people feel polarized one way or the other. Of like, that guy sounds like this, so fuck him, or that guy blah 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 does this, so fuck him. It's like, I personally don't have a problem with it if people are very clear about what they're doing. They're like, well, this is just the way I produce, dude. Sue me. I'm like, all right, well, own it, dude. You know, that's just the thing. Anyways, so going off of that, you know, talked about template. You know, that's going to be how you mitigate having to have these other tracks in your session. So if you are doing that, of course, stop and make a template. That should be your next step. You should be thinking about, what do you personally use? Do you use a specific kit, synth, sub, samples, whatever you always find yourself loading up in the DAW first? Have that loaded up in the DAW. You know, sometimes people have hook lines or samples that they use in every track, so have that in the actual template. If you don't want your arrangement, put it in your clips for your session. If you're in a different DAW, maybe make a folder with all the current shit that you use. And then finally, know your style. So again, you know, have a workflow that you build for yourself. So if you find yourself veering off from an original idea, have a checks and balances system for your workflow. So if you deliberate too long on something and then you find yourself scatterbrained after, go do something else, start a new track. Save this one, move on. It doesn't mean that it's scrapped and it's garbage. It just means that you've lost perspective and you need to take some time away from something to get perspective. And so when you know your own style, you know that you're veering off from something that was what your idea was. So, you know, you just need to figure that out when it happens and not get down on yourself. It happens to everybody. So you need to just pretty much be compassionate when that happens to yourself. So you don't get, a bad writer's block. Because writer's block will happen all the time. Just when it happens, you can't get pissed at yourself or else it will proliferate, because it's similar to depression. And so it's a very fickle thing, just being able to write music fluidly and all the time. So making music every day, how do you do that? You just sit down and do it, regardless of whether or not it's all working out. You need the experience and the workflow. So the workflow is hardcore muscle memory. It's not your best track. That's making your best track. Your best track is going to come after you have all that shit down. After the 3 years of you maybe not knowing anything about production, but still sitting down in Ableton and producing every single day. Or producing a bunch of times a week, releasing tracks. So you're actually making decisions and literally being okay with it from a perspective of knowing nothing. Now that you know something, you can actually become 10 times, if not 100 times better, and then even throw everything out again. And now you have this new perspective of just knowing something, throwing everything you knew out, and then just throwing paint at the wall. So that's my approach with stuff. So I just throw all that shit out so I can just have a clean, open mindset just for whatever I decide to do that day. So 3 things: know your style, templates, sample, track flow, integrity, make the music, and then repeat. So that should be your day-to-day. If you want a workflow, do these 3 things. So it's a lot of shit that I just talked about, but you will get a workflow with this. Okay, so I have a session open here. And actually this is missing a sound. Alright, so obviously switching gears here. I think this is roughly what it should be. Okay. Sometimes Reactor wants to be a piece of shit, but bring that in a second. Alright, so this track is a track that I already have done, released, signed. This is a flip of Blue by Brock Wilson that's out on Mad Zoo. It's one of the labels that I'm part of. That Matt Zoe runs, pretty cool little family. But yeah, so this was a track that I started up within like a few days and then sent this whole thing back, and it was like they were all stoked, and so it was just kind of done after that. But my workflow with this was really clean, and I just remembered that, so that's why I brought that up here. So this is a pretty minimal track. There's not too many things going on, 20 tracks. My whole workflow is to be somewhat minimal throughout the process because I like to have certain things happen all at once. I'll go and fill in a ton of stuff if I don't have stems to work from. So I had a ton of stems to work from the original, so I had an easy spot to kind of go off from. All right, so let's just check this out.
I'm just a button, cause you're fast falling on my skin. I wouldn't doubt it if you tell me. What could I do to You don't know me, I'm blue like the color of my skin. I'm blue like the color that I'm from against. And I'm fat. Blue like you.
Alrighty. That's enough. Silence. Okay, so, yeah, appreciate it. So this tune, I wrote this like last year, but for the most part, when I start like a remix or anything that's going to be like a bootleg or an adaptation, we've talked about like using samples as your material to like create melody lines and all that stuff. I did the same process here, and I always do that process, like literally. Why? Because when I started implementing that specific process for myself, for my own releases, they started landing. So I'm always emulating part of the original, that is being supported somehow in my melody. I'm going to veer off at the drop, of course, but there's also going to be allusions and motifs from that original melody in the drop line as well. Like a specific one, if I can, I guess, load up Firefox in a second here, I can show you this Flowrider remix I had posted up on Big Beat a while back. That was one of the things I actually developed this workflow with, just because that approach works so well. I just wanted to keep doing that and find different ways to do it. And so, that's one piece of workflow. Beyond just loading shit up is being able to support a melody. Where are you getting your melody from? Where's the vibe coming from? So why is that important, and almost more important than me sitting down and telling you how all this shit works? Because you could do this. You literally could have made this track with the same type of material, even with presets, just because you know how to support melodies and you know how to like emulate stuff. And so there's a specific kind of modulation in here that goes so the that's being used pretty much in all of these lines here as kind of like the turnaround. And then there's another melody line in the vocal.
Teardrops falling on my skin, I wouldn't doubt it if you told me.
Okay, so this part right here where it says da 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 da. So like that run right there, I based the entire drop line off. So I'm using that in order to give myself material to kind of work off and have something to go off of for this. Because when I was asked to do it, I was like, what can I possibly do? I kind of want to do something halftime, but I also want to make it very lo-fi. So that was my actual mentality when starting up this track, was I'm going to go for lo-fi halftime vibe with this. So I wanted to get this lo-fi vibe in the beginning. So a ton of dragging on the drums, ton of like swing on the bass as well. A lot of this was actually played in as well. So, I like to play along and record stuff to the vocal in order to get these little licks out, and then I'll probably go and repurpose it, as in like cutting it up and placing it in the right spot, or repeating certain spots I think should just have like just one little sub in here, a ton of space. Something I love about lo-fi and like left field stuff is that it drags for so long. So like having a ton of space between kick and snare is huge. So that's part of my workflow specifically. It's like I know that it does that, so I go and do it. And then when I do it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. How can I make it work for this spot? Cool. I want the snare to drag. So pretty much I will push the bass, so the bass happens a little earlier, so then the kick snare can kind of like fall into that downbeat. So this is not directly on 4, which it kind of should be, but this is more of like a two-stepping kind of like drag to beat. So it's constantly pushing itself the whole time. So this is stuff that I like to do. And when I go and decide to make beats like this, I'm specifically going and doing this to the beat. I might grid out something really hardcore, and then I'll go and move it around and fuck it up. You know, but I have a good template to kind of start from. Okay, so let me just get to some of these questions here. All right, so or just discussion. Yeah, so I completely agree with all you guys. You know, you're gonna have to get through all this writer's block stuff and workflow stuff in order to actually, you know, grow as a producer, because it's part of the growing process. Like literally, like everything I just talked about here was stuff I've learned over the years, stuff I personally like. It's like I like dragged beats. Why? Because I love Questlove. So people I'm influenced by influence what I do. Is this a Questlove beat? No, it's not. But I drag beats like Questlove, and Questlove drags beats like Dilla. So therefore, I listen to Dilla all the time. You know, and I get a lot of my influence from that. So I assimilate things from different sources that I go and apply to something that I love to make, which is loud music. So, you know, you have to go and like kind of cut that really clear for yourself. What's your first piece that you're starting on? What is the thing you are basing your entire track on? And that can be figured out within the first, you know, 8 bars of producing something. If you've ever seen like any of my production streams where I'm just making tunes, that's exactly how I'm producing as well. I'm literally like choosing a vibe. Maybe I'll start drop first, but even when I do start drop first, that drop can go to 5 or 6 different genres before I decide on one. You know, and when I decide on that one, I make the entire thing kind of that. You know, I don't really like having a separate genre flip up, you know, 4 bars into a drop, because I personally cannot dance to that. So I also cater to that. So the fact that I like to dance to this shit. So I will definitely cater to it being part of some type of step. You know, so everything I'm choosing in here is something that is supposed to kind of move you back and forth. So I'm choosing to do that though. It's not just happening because I'm loading up samples or whatever, guessing, copying somebody else, you know, their structure per se, because dragging the beat, that's something that's native to jazz, you know, so that's something I've learned from playing bass in jazz bands. So it's like you have to play with the drummer in order to push and pull the beat in different ways for the band. So the band doesn't have swing unless the rhythm section has swing. That's really the whole thing. So in order for you to kind of like get a clear-cut workflow where you can achieve this, because this track, I was asked to do it very, very close to the deadline. That's why it's more minimal. So this was written, mixed, and mastered within a week. And I have the mix over here. So this mix actually didn't bounce out into stems, but I actually organized it in this production session here before I saved it. So every time I finish producing, my next step is to organize my session for my mix. If I don't do that, then I can't mix, because then everything's all over the place. So if you don't have that for yourself, then it's a little bit hard to go and like approach the mix. Like some of this stuff I'll have like live processing, some of it will be offline. But for the most part, you know, everything's in one little group where I can perfectly like shape it, limit it if it needs to be limited. So like for like a drum stem, you might want to limit your peaks around like neg 3 for like a loud pop mix. Loud pop mixes are around neg 5 to neg 6 LUFS nowadays, meaning like your peak value is probably around neg 3 to neg 2, and then RMS is around neg 5. So when I'm trying to make like more pop oriented mixes, I'll pretty much dial my drums up around there. I usually start around a neg 6, but I will push up the volume with just the general like overall glue compression stuff in order to like make it have support for that. So, I mean, that's just some mixed stuff that I'm actually just dropping right now. But this is literally for my workflow for mixing. Step 2 after producing. This is literally like the easy step. It should be the easy step. Because when you're doing sound design and stuff, you're constantly doing like mixing techniques in order to make the sound work. So for the most part, your sounds should be somewhat dialed together where you can actually like accurately set up the mix for you to kind of like work through and kind of make the next step. And then finally you move to master, and I believe I have the master session still. And of course I had to like, you know, master myself before I sent it out. And then Matt Zoe also mastered it. And then we kind of just compared. I think we ended up going with mine. But I actually really love Matt's mixes as well. He's a really good mix engineer. All right, so pretty much what I did in order to get from this part to, you know, or I guess from mix to master, really, is I take my entire mix, print it internally, and then delete all the tracks after saving a new session. So I'll have the pre-master right here, which is deleted or gone, and then the master. So that's kind of like 1, 2, 3. Produce, mix, master. That can all be done with just like a clear like workflow, like literally. Like once you're done producing your track, got everything together, started from a template, whatever, you know. For me, it was, you know, just straight up from blank because that's just kind of how I like to do shit. But yeah, so you just go and print everything, maybe export, doesn't matter, I guess, a little bit. But before you even do that, you know, I just put this on just for right now, but pretty much you want your mix dialed up and loud. You want it to be represented perfect the way you want to hear it in the master before master. And then you want to make it in the green, mixing in the green, meaning mix low for loudness. And that's something you should start implementing to your workflow right now. Mix low for loudness. Mix quiet and you'll be loud. So that means when you're mixing, turn everything down. I said the same thing like 5 times. But really, it's a hard thing to kind of get under control, especially when you're kind of starting out because everything gets loud really quick. So I produce loud, but then I mix quiet. Sometimes it will mess up my mix perspective, producing loud. But even before I go to mix, I will start to scale back the volume of everything. That's, for me, rough mix. So if you're taking notes right now, here's your workflow, 3-step process. Decide the vibe. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Why are you doing it? This remix because label that I'm part of. Okay. All right. So when's deadline? Oh, 1 week. Okay. So stems? Yes. Okay. So then I base everything off stems, use the vocal to support a lot of the chorus parts and all of my interludes and stuff. Base all of the bass lines off of his melody lines from his vocal to the Rhodes behind it and the leads, and repurpose those. Reuse them in different ways, recolor them a little bit. I also changed the key of the entire track. So that's something as well. I mean, kind of losing people. Although, honestly, I don't really care because this is all like super important shit. So anybody who's still here, kudos, I guess. Anybody who didn't see that as pertinent, I guess your workflow is perfect. But yeah, so, you know, that's literally the whole thing. Like, I literally ranted all last week about why the fuck you're doing something. So, this is the fuck. Why the fuck? This is the fuck. For the label. when I have that deadline, set it. My workflow is now changed because of that deadline. I'm now going to deliberate less on resynthesizing everything in this track. And I'm going to really make it about this main bass line, which I wanted to be funky. And then I was like, gonna make the second drop somewhat like the first one, but then I just tried this kind of 4 on the floor kind of funk thing. And I liked it a lot. And so did Matt. So we just kind of let it sit there. But I was expecting some hardcore feedback about the second drop, being like, it's a little too crazy. But, you know, just the way it worked out with everything, because I'm still repurposing like the like every little part of that bass line that I'm doing is actually melody lines from the vocal. So no piece of this bass line is actually unsupported here. So it gives me room to go and do whatever I want on the drops, but then still be calling back to this motif. And so when we talk about like production and all that, or when I do out loud on stream, that's pretty much what it's like all about, is about, you know, how to go and execute your genre, how to execute the thing that you want to do, you know, that you literally set out for. Like I set for my workflow, I have this deadline for this label for my homie Brock, and also I want to make it like this. I want to make a lo-fi this track. You know, so I went and literally set up the template for that, which is loading the kit that I like, choosing the right drums that I like as well, and then, you know, dragging the beat, doing all that stuff I literally just talked about, all part of my workflow. Things that I'm looking for the beat, and I'm not satisfied until I hear it, and when I do, I have more perspective on where I want to go with the rest of the track. So all that stuff, like if I'm able to get the intro down and vibe with it and then set up a first drop, I actually can fill in the rest of the track within, you know, an hour or so. Doesn't need to be done, but you can lay out the framework, the skeleton, and then start filling in. You know, it's like when you're a sculptor, you know, you start out with a big block of marble and you chip away at it. So it's kind of the same perspective here. You need to have the workflow that allows you to fill in all this stuff, allows you to create this universe of, you know, possibilities, which is pretty much using your sampled material in order to create melody lines in this situation, because I was being asked to do this remix. I wasn't just doing it on my own accord, wasn't just using, you know, like bootleg material and all that stuff. Alright, so let me show you one more track. It's not good. Oh, hold up. This is actually from an old alias that is dead, and I just let it die. But it was what I used to ghost produce under for a while. Not actually the name, but okay, so this track, you know, came out a long time ago. And I didn't really put out too much stuff as Arcane, but this Jameson Thieves was one of my students and stuff. Yeah, this track definitely was a hit, unfortunately. But the same exact approach, I guess I can listen to it. Oh my god. All right. I don't need to show more of that. Um, okay, so the same exact approach there, where I was pretty much, supporting the main flow writer lyric, and then just doing a ton of sound design, all that stuff. It's like 5 or 6 years old actually. It's a very old track. But my workflow hasn't changed since then. That's why it's a good thing to get that down, because I've been developing my workflow with recording and using a DAW since I was 16 years old. So that's over 10 years of experience. Just from me, from the perspective of knowing nothing back then to the point of knowing stuff now. So now I throw a lot of that out just so I can get back to where I used to be when I was, I guess, a kid approaching music. But that perspective can be maintained. You can go back there. You're never unable to not be a kid. Pretty much what you have to do is just set it up so you can actually have a workflow that, supports all that shit too. Okay, so I'm getting like a little resample out here because now let's step into the next part. So, workflow, huge thing. It's going to be something that you have to fill in over time, with conditioning to yourself, as well as, you're never behind, Mary. And like that's like really the thing. Everybody has their timing. And that's something you need to remind yourself. Is you're not behind, it's just not your time yet. Because it's literally your time is a reference point. It's relative to when you start. So you're never behind. You're only behind if you're dead. So that's literally the only roadblock from you getting better at what you're doing and shit. So you just have to like make the steps to get better today and just constantly push yourself, That's why I talk about humility and all this shit and bore people or piss people off or whatever. I don't know. Because I've seen so many producers and friends, even people that, I was once close with, still are, close. It's just like their heads are too big now. Cannot endure them as a person. That all could have been avoided had they have just been a little bit more real starting out. Because a lot of people hide their true intentions and then end up showing that once they make it. So, it's kind of a way for people to, not be jaded by that very, very specific example, because that's going to happen all the time, and it happens very, 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 very commonly. So it's not something that's uncommon. Okay, so work on that. If you're feeling like you need to make it through a bunch of stuff in order to get to that point, then take the steps you need to do. Exactly my first point, why I talked about Slack and Asana, was if you don't know how to go and organize that shit, just start organizing it. Start making a list of what you think you need to do and start checking it off, and then hold yourself accountable, because nobody else is going to, unless you're paying them to. If you're paying someone to hold you accountable, like a personal trainer or something, then yes, it's their job to remind you, and then I guess you could still give them pushback. But, really, like, you're only accountable to yourself, so if you don't start holding yourself accountable today, you're not going to be good tomorrow, pretty much. If you decide to do it tomorrow, you're not going to be good tomorrow, because today you decided to do nothing. All right, so you gotta really just think about that. Do it. If you don't, then you're lost. Okay, so there's another part of the workflow here we're going to talk about in a minute. But yeah, read this little blurb here. Say if you are running into roadblocks with just getting started and stuff, here's a bunch of ways in order to kind of get yourself past roadblocks. And this is for professional perspective. And this also has like some kind of software that's paired with it or whatever. You don't have to subscribe to that shit, but this is just really good tips. So brainstorm, think about what you want to do, write it out, maybe do it, maybe don't, but brainstorming will give you all the possibilities. And then that's exactly my next point. Challenge the results so you can map it out, then do none of those things. But what's great about mapping it out is now that you have mapped it out, you know exactly where to go. That's not anywhere you decided to go. So you're like, oh, well, I didn't think about that. Let me try that. And then you realize that that was really fun. So look into that. And then you have, you know, define where your, you know, workflow can be improved. Always be looking for ways to speed yourself up in terms of just straight up technical skill. You shouldn't be hindered by having to do something with the keyboard, with key commands, whatever, because the only thing that should be holding you back is, say, music theory. If you're trying to make melodic stuff, then it would be kind of hard. But still, you can use the key scroller or the key scale, and then actually just draw on notes. Big professional person who does that, who doesn't know music theory very well, is Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer is very, very vocal about it too. So Hans Zimmer also has a team of about 7 to 8 different composers who work for him. And so he'll like compose the first piece and then have them do derivative pieces, which are all like based off of his original ideas and stuff. Brilliant composer, does not really know too much about music theory. Surprisingly. Not a pianist. Yes, they do. But also, he's very aware about Testosu's thing. Those composers probably know music theory, though. And yes, they do. So, and Hans Zimmer also knows music theory. He's just not very good at it. You know, he's not like Beethoven. You know? So that's really the point, is that he's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. You just have to do it. And then you have to decide what you want to do. Okay, so now let's talk about recording. So let's talk about an engineering workflow. So when you're engineering stuff, and this is applicable to all, because if you're an engineer, you know, you could be starting your own studio, whatever, applicable to you. But if you're a producer, you're going to have to record a vocalist someday. That might be a really daunting thing. And you might have no idea on how to start that up. And so you can look online for professional engineers to talk about that stuff. There's also stuff in books on how to do that. But we can talk about it here as well. So, you know, how to get started, you know, first decide or, you know, determine, is it your session or someone else's? You know, and I wrote all this, so this is just my wording here. It's not from a, you know, article or whatever. So, you know, you need to know if you're calling the shots or not, because you don't want to be the second cook in the kitchen. You want to be the supporting cook, assistant engineer, you know, not getting in the way of the work. So if you are calling the shots along with them, they're hiring you as an executive producer now. You're executive producing and engineering, you know. So there's a lot going on there. You have a big piece of their pie, actually, because if you're calling the shots on how some of the music should go, now you're getting IP on their music. Hence why Quincy Jones, Rick Rubin have IP on a bunch of top 40 shit, because they have called the shots in some way. So you have to make that, you know, conversation happen with whoever you're recording, you know, not like, all right, so who's the boss here? You know, you just need to ask what they need. Literally, if they're saying, yeah, I don't really know yet, blah, blah, like, I haven't really finished making the track yet, I haven't finished doing something. If they say they haven't finished part of the production and you can help with that, make that clear. Don't wait for it to be in studio and expect them to work on your rig, you know, because that's a waste of everyone's time. So make sure that happens and everybody's ready to go, both ends. So that's the first step. And then it's, what are you recording after that? what do you need to get prepared for? Is it a vocalist singing? Is it a rapper? So you got to ask them a couple things. Are the lyrics done? That's the biggest thing. Are they done? So what else do they need to make it happen? Within reason. If they're asking for like crazy drugs or some shit, you don't have to do any of that. Obviously, but really you want to make sure that they're comfortable and they have a beat and they have their lyrics. So as an engineer, you're literally responsible for all that. As a producer, EDM SoundCloud producer, deciding to engineer a producer or different like singer or a rapper, that's also something you should be worried about. You should be worried about this because then it makes the session better. Makes your shit get done quicker if you give a fuck about somebody else besides yourself. So it's not just about you, it's about the other person you're bringing in. And other way around, it's about the person who's hiring you to do something. So you want to make sure that they're getting what they're paying for. So exactly my talk here about communicate beforehand if they need, forgot the D, extra production done so you can prep the session for it prior. So I've had singer-songwriters come in that record, acoustic guitars, and then I have to produce a track for them. Like actually make the track happen behind it. Wasn't part of it, didn't talk about it, and then I have to have that conversation in the studio. Like, oh, okay, so you want me to do this? Oh, it's going to be all this extra. Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, a little awkward, but no problem. So what do you need to make it happen? What kind of stuff do you need to record? What do you have to pivot to do to make this happen? Do you need a better recording environment? So you have to save for that. More plugins, renting hardware. That's a huge thing. So if you need a good mic for just the weekend, you can go rent it and try to not break it. And then, just make it happen. There's a bunch of ways to make it happen on a huge budget from your studio apartment. So, just make it happen somehow, but also itemize the list of what you need to make it happen. So if you're recording a vocalist, what type of mic do they even like, if they have a preference on mic, and then making that mic come to you. Also having a place to record, like creating a vocal booth or whatever, that's another part. So you need to have all that stuff ready to go, or else it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to just record vocals on a track that you produced. So get that ready, understand how to do that. Another one is just writing lyrics. If you're making music and want people to record stuff on your music, sometimes like I will personally ask for them to like write lyrics. I have a couple tracks where I have that done right now with antinegative, and I just gave them the concept. There's this one track was like about AI or whatever, and it's about an AI experiencing pain for the first time. So I was like, that's the vibe I wrote the track with, and she's like, oh shit, well I got that exactly, so I am inspired. I am writing something about that right now. And then she even like gave me 4 different parts where she put distortion on the vocal and all this other shit that she felt inspired to do. And so I was like, oh shit, fuck yes, thank you. So, it's like I gave her the inspiration and she rolled with it. And that's what good recording artists do, pretty much. Is they're able to kind of take direction, develop on it. If you're an engineer, same exact perspective. Take direction, roll with it. Don't veer off and give your perspective immediately. Try what they're asking because they're paying you, or because, you're just being asked to like help out with something. Okay. So, we're going to kind of like just be about that next week, next Saturday. So for right now, I want to kind of leave you guys with some, I guess, ideas of where and how you can start recording shit in a weird environment. Say just from your monitors specifically, because people like Lorne and a bunch of other people, just Lorne as one example for right now, they definitely do this. They record shit straight from their speakers. They go out into the hall, record shit there from their speakers. Doesn't matter. You can record something from your phone and import it into the DAW and then have it be like part of everything else. So, a bunch of different ways to go about this. All right. So, reamping. What is reamping? Can anybody here who's here in the chat tell me what reamping is? Even though it's in the guide. While I prep. Yes. Yes, those are answers. Those are correct. So, recording what is in your computer. Physically, what is it called? Or literally, what is it called? Let's look this shit. Or what's the whole process? You know, it's reamping something that was once analog-ish, and this is ish. But say if we were doing reamping with like live recording session, this is done with guitarists specifically. So they have a DI box that they go and split out the signal directly from the patch cord on the guitar. So one chord from that DI split goes to their amp, and then they record that. And then one patch goes directly to the console and records the dry straight out of the guitar sound. And so then they take that dry straight out of the guitar sound, and once they're ready to finalize the mix, they go and run that dry guitar sound through another amp, different settings, something else to create another version of that sound, but the original performance. So reamping is cool for that. Great for that. Take one guitarist, turn them into 10. And then all different amps, and, you know, same player, same performance too. So cool here is that we can go and take digital stuff, you know, resample it, you know, internally. So we're D to D here, digital to digital. But with this, now we can go and convert something from digital signal to actual analog signal. So, all right, so I'm recording here. All right, so I'm gonna have to mute my vocal for a second while I record this. But I actually want to do a couple things to it really quick. So I want to just kind of put it in like a weird kind of space. So I'm just gonna put some dry verb. Dry as in just a regular stock verb. Compress it a little bit. Okay, so now that I have that, what I want to do, so I'm going to turn off this track because I do not want it to feedback on itself. And turn on recording, so record this, and I'm patched into my mic right now. And then I'm going to have to turn up my speakers here. And then I'm going to have to mute my mic. So it's going to be 1 second while I record this. Okay. Check, check, check. Okay. So I got this recorded now. I yelled into the mic once. Let's hear how it sounds. And of course it's going to be mono. Oops. So pretty much all scooped out in mono. It's kind of cool because it's being degraded though. It's an instant lo-fi material. So like if you want to get more stereo, whatever, out of it again, of course you can just add stereo. Yeah, I'm actually really into that tone. So this is a really cool way to do a lot of stuff, and this is just me resampling that or reamping that. Say let's take something that's a little bit more synthy. We'll just use analog. I want to make some like kind of bigger pluck sounds. Put them in a big space. And then I'm going to do this a couple ways actually. I'm actually going to record this here first as well. And then I'm going to also record this with my iPhone. And then bring that back with my iPhone. I do want to put it in a space though. So I have this space, and then I can like go outside my room into the hall and then try to get that reverb. Of course, if you add two mics though, you can get like some kind of stereo signal. Okay, so it's some kind of like somber vibe. I don't even know. So that's cool. So now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to record it into this. And for this one, I'm actually going to put my mic straight up. Oh, I'm actually touching my mic right now. Whoops. I'm actually going to put it straight up to my monitor. So just 1 second while I mute everything. Okay. Okay. Yeah, straight up loudest stream on Twitch. Alright, so I've recorded this right here. So let's check it out. This is my monitor's media. Alright, so that's like gonna darken up the tone. Now it's mono again, just like it was before. And, you know, you just get a lot of different like textures out of it. You can put it in a different space. This is not just for miking up your monitors, of course. This is actually for, you know, developing on like what you're already doing with, you know, like reverbs and everything else. It's like reamping is the fundamental like technique on how a reverb chamber is made. So reverb chambers have a loudspeaker and a mic, and it's one room that's super resonant, and so they just blast sound into that room and record it. And the mic is in a nice spot in the room, so it's not shitty. So, you know, that's literally the only concept there. So you can go and make your own reverb spaces with a speaker and a mic. Any situation. Say if you had a mic and you filled a metal box full of quarters, and then there was like a speaker that rattled that box, and then you just plug the mic into your input, and then it's just like a distortion, because it records a distorted penny version of your bass. So there's like literally infinite possibilities with what I'm showing you right here, and there's entire courses and master's degrees based around this concept, because this is also called acoustic ensemble, where acoustic ensemble is about taking the world and making it an instrument. So at Stanford, they have a huge thing for that, for makers. So the makers, they come in and they pretty much go and make whatever they want. And we'll make like speakers made from like big metal like oil barrels and stuff, because metal can become a transducer, so they can reverse the like polarity and also transduce sound into anything metal, and then send, like a dude was playing a guitar through these oil barrels that were turned into amps. So you can turn almost anything into a reverb chamber. If you got a little like tin can, like say if I got a can right now, put it up to my speaker and then mic'd up that can, I would get the sound of the room and the can as well. So, you know, there's many ways to do it. You could even cut a hole in the bottom of a can, put an SM57 in that, and then mic stuff up with the can attached to the mic. And now you have this weird can mic. I don't even know why. What's that for? I don't know. For weird sounds, though. That's pretty much it. All right, so, you know, that's my bass recorded through my SM7. And it sounds pretty cool. Definitely not as loud and full as the original, obviously, but it gives me this like really pulled back version of itself, where this is way more emotive than the original, because it has this fleeting effect where it feels like it's pulling you in from a distance. All right, so let's try this one more time. And yeah, mic in a corner with comb filtering can actually be a kind of cool sound. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my phone to voice memo this out in the hall. And then we're going to record that. And what's cool about voice memos is that your iPhone mic is stereo. Okay. All right, so I gotta prep this again. Just 1 second. Turn up my monitors all the way here. Not all the way, but pretty loud. Then I'm gonna mute the stream mic. So just 1 second. I'm gonna play this on loop. And for this, I actually don't need to hit record on anything besides my iPhone. All right, so I'll be 1 second. About to mute myself now. Okay. Yeah, just Dostu's comment. Yeah, it is kind of like the Beatles. One person that they actually reference in pretty much every recording program is Led Zeppelin specifically. Here's the situation. If you ever listen to When the Levee Breaks, when the levee breaks break in the beginning of the track where it's like boo boo, gah, it's like huge drums. That entire drum recording was made in Jimmy Page's castle that he bought. It's like a satanic castle, some crazy shit. And there's this giant spiral staircase. And what he did was he had John Bonham set up his drums at the bottom of the stairs. And then he set up a mic at the top of the stairs. Huge brain energy. Yeah, so like there's a very, very specific idea right there. Record drum verb. And so what I was doing here is actually put both of these tracks on because I actually liked the way they were kind of flamming with each other just from the latency and all that. So I kept that going. Okay, so now I just need to airdrop this recording to myself. Please stand by. It is almost there. There it is. Wow. Okay, so this is an M4A, so it's compressed. So this is the only bad thing, is that it's super compressed. And hopefully it doesn't cross my session, just putting this M4A in here. I can see Ableton just being like, yo, I can't do it. I can't do that. Alright. So Let's check this out. Its own track. Get the fuck out. All right, so kind of hear me breathing in there a little bit, but it's like super degraded in the background. What I love doing with this shit is like resampling and like pitching it around and shit. See, that's pretty sick right here. This sounds kind of like a sitar now, like pitched up. So what I would do with this is probably sample this here and then like print it or consolidate at least, and then put that into some type of sampler and just start playing it back. Ooh. Yep. Yee. So that sounds super good. Honestly, would not have that tone or texture without me having recorded that with my iPhone from downstairs. Okay, so that's kind of it for class today. A little bit short today, but honestly, not that many people here, so it's all good. But I talked about everything I wanted to talk about today, which is more mindset stuff, workflow stuff. You know, you should be kind of moving your own workflow to the next step, and I'm going to harp that, and I wanted to talk about that for 2 weeks straight, because without that, some of you don't have the right foot forward. Not just from people not knowing what to do, it's just, you know, some people just need some guidance on that, need to be told, hey, just go and organize this, go and do that, in order for them to take that step for themselves. So please take that step for yourself now. Enjoy this crab. It's a crab. It's a crab 3D model. Listen, I need a new GPU because this crab right here, I have a bunch of different visualizers based on this man, this citizen of snipping, and it is too much processing. Listen. I'm getting distracted. But yeah, so, you know, develop your workflow, please, because it makes your entire process quicker, easier. You have less questions, and then when you do, it's not so much about what do I do next, it's about, does this sound good? I need a second opinion. Literally, That's how most art should be. You really shouldn't be asking somebody if this is good or not. Just say, what do you think? Because you just want to hear their opinion. Because everybody's, you know, perspective on music is somewhat of an opinion, unless they are saying something about your process, which is, you know, that's not opinion because you're doing it. So it's like if you know something somebody's doing, you call them out for it, and then they are being a dick about it, obviously, there's a problem there. And that's the case with most people who end up ripping stuff from people. Perfect example, and I will definitely drag these assholes. Caked Up. I don't know if anybody remembers them, and you shouldn't really. But Caked Up, and specifically this dude, Oscar Wilde, felt the need to just take whatever the fuck he wanted because, he's a hot emo dude. And I'm sorry, dude. You just can't. And everybody called him out on all of his bullshit. And then he ended up trying to save his ass by showing people his own production, or him producing the track, but really he just put a clap on a literal snippet from a demo track from a sample pack. And this was the thing that really canceled them, which was a huge benefit for Dim Mak and the scene once Caked Up got canceled. But it's not the only situation. That's one just like the most public and hilarious, because this dude actually decided to stream and be like, hey guys, I produce my music. And everybody's like, bro, you put reverb on a clap and there's a giant fucking MP3 leading up into your drop. So funny, dude. And Oscar thought he can get away with it, and then he just started talking more shit after. It was like, well, fuck you guys, whatever, fucking blah. It's like, sick, bro. You're so funny. It's like you're like A, stupid, and then B, more stupid for trying to think that we're dumb enough to be gaslit by you. So that's the funny shit. I really just do not like him. I don't like Oscar either. He's an asshole. I had him over at the studio once, and just like so entitled, dude. Most entitled person I've ever worked with. But yeah, so like that's the type of shit that you don't want. And if you end up becoming that, sorry, dude. Like you're not gonna have a very long career. Become a model or something. I don't know. Do something else. That's like literally like the only other option, because like if you're not going to be real with people, you're going to steal shit, you're going to take advantage of people, there's no place for you here. And you're going to have to fight for your place. You might be able to take a place, for sure, but eventually it will be taken from you, similar to the way the spots were taken from Bass Nectar and Space Jesus. For better or worse, for however you want to look at it, they lost it. They lost everything that they ever built. So that's that. They can still come back, have fans, whatever, do what's his face, ass, dat, sick is doing. But, just like that, he's not going to have the same seat. It's not going to have the same vibe. It's all over. If somebody doesn't have anything else to do with their life, I guess they can come back still. And then they have to really be ready to take the hit. Wow, so topical. This is very much their lives. So don't be this. Plan out your workflow. Have integrity and shit. If you don't have integrity, people will. Integrity also includes having integrity for yourself. So when somebody steps over your boundaries, you let them know that, and you let them know quick. Because if you don't, then people will continually do that. And then you will set yourself up to be jaded, because people will take advantage of you, and you won't really have the confidence you deserve, actually, for real. So take all that into account. Definitely plan your shit out. Start doing bubble charts. I don't know, dude. Anything that works for you, figure that out. Figure out what type of organization works for you, because there is a version for everyone. If you're someone who doesn't even listen to instruction at all, you're not even watching this video. So I don't give a shit about you. But for everyone who does give a fuck, you know, that's something you need to do, because once I did that, dude, like, I got work. I was able to organize all my shit. I was able to present myself to these different companies and get work. It was like literally night and day. I didn't get work because I was so disorganized, having ADHD, all this shit. Then I was like, no, I need to do it. And I just held myself to it. And really, it's like working out. It doesn't feel good while you're doing it, but eventually it feels normal, And so you just have to do that. You have to start some point, or else, again, bad foundation. You plateau. You lose inspiration. You lose. It's mostly just the inspiration, because I'm talking to like-minded people here. I'm not talking to the people that I was just saying are watching. So I believe everybody who is part of this course and like watching these videos really attentively is like very receptive to being unique, to being themselves. Because if you're looking to carve your niche in any industry, there's always one directly for you, because there's zero other people like you. Because like nobody else has your personal experience, upbringing, all that stuff. They're humans. We're all humans, but nobody's exactly you. So if you're exactly yourself, then there's always a spot, because there's literally no one else like you. So 1000% map your shit out, figure out a version that works, and then start working on your workflow. And one last thing, I guess, one more tip about workflow. Specifically, if you find yourself having trouble telling yourself what to do, which can be a thing, saying like, oh, I'm sitting down to do this, and then every time it's like, oh, I can't ever do that, because every time I sit down and say range drum bass, I always make a shitty drum and bass track and then end up flipping it into lo-fi. So I will make whatever the fuck I want. So if that's you, that's me, actually, I'm speaking from me, then sometimes you just have to let the flow happen. You have to just, coax yourself through it. It's like I'm super fickle with my inspiration. Like it can be gone like that, like literally within an instant. Someone says something wrong, it's just like, all right, shut the door, no one talk to me for the rest of the night or whatever, But that's me. So I know how to roll out of my own bullshit pretty much and be like, all right, dude, just chill. It's fine. Move forward and then just get it done. But yeah, that's 100% how you're going to get work in this industry, is having confidence, good workflow, good work ethic, and then having it organized. Because having it organized is what all the, I don't want to call them fuckboys, but the people who aren't as talented, who are getting the spot that you deserve. Because hard work always beats talent, because talent doesn't work hard. So you have to work hard and be talented in order to have the seat that you deserve. Be Kanye. You want to be Kanye, you have to be as hardworking as Kanye. We can judge him for everything he's ever done, but he's still Kanye. He's still at his seat. He's still got there. So if we want to be as big as him, or as successful, as influential, you have to literally be super confident in yourself, have a career ladder, have something you're shooting for, and then shoot for it, get it. It's like for Kanye, that's like being as big as Jay-Z. Never gonna get there, bro. Never gonna be as liked, bro. But you can still keep running. That's Kanye. That's a different discussion. But not denying how big he is, though. Not denying where he's been, what he did that was great at one point. So, or even denying his artistry. Actually for me, I can really kind of block somebody out of my life and then still look out for them. I'm just weird like that. Actually something happened like that recently, where somebody actually had blocked actively on Twitter and most social media. Somebody took some of their shit, and instead of going and finding them and doing all that shit to be like, do you care about this? I just took care of it, because, I'm not gonna I'm not going to stand by while that happens to anybody, even if I don't necessarily like that person. You know, it's not going to be something I stand for. So it's how I live my life, and I have to like keep that integrity for myself, because if I don't, then I end up living this dual existence where I'm saying one thing and living another. But you know, it's not how I am. I don't do that. I'll tell you the truth if I can, if it's safe for me to tell you the truth. So that's going to be it for this week. Appreciate everybody for coming through. Appreciate everybody for sticking around. Yeah, I know this GIF on loop is actually kind of a vibe. Forget what I was using this for. I think it was for a motion project or something. It's like resampling it into something. But this guy's the homie. Am I right? Hey, look at this. Look at the detail in this shit. I also love that you can look at models like this and move them around from preview. It's kind of legit. If only we can animate straight from the Finder. It's almost more stable than Blender. Look at that. Look at that texture. Crabs. Oh, I didn't make this crab. This was a crab that was downloaded from a crab designer. I forget exactly which designer. I found it though, and it's their pride and joy. This man prides himself on designing this crab. It was like first thing on the website. I was like, whoa, it's a great looking crab. Can't pass that up. Almost like a king crab. King crabs would be a little bit spikier though. Let me show you guys a track, I guess. I don't know if I should show you guys this one. Okay. Alright, y'all. Peace.